art person. Now, I'm not an artist. I'm bad at art. But I've been around art and creative people my whole life. Now, my parents weren't professional artists, but they lived their creative lives fully. Dad built theater sets in the garage and wrote skits for our neighborhood repertory theater. We had a full dance studio with mirrors in the basement where Mom taught choreography to barbershop choruses and quartets. As a kid, I tried everything. Sculpture, painting, photography, drawing, a little bit of theater, piano, Suzuki. I even played the drums for a while. I wasn't great, but I loved it all. As a teenager, my friends and I would skip school, and we would go to the art museum. My favorite thing to do was to go straight to the third floor to the contemporary galleries. That artwork opened our minds and led to some amazing conversations. Well, it's those conversations about art with good friends that's still important to me today. So it wasn't a direct path, but I've eventually created a career for myself as a public art planner, curator, and producer. I work mostly with public agencies to bring permanent and temporary works of art to public spaces, airports, transit stations, parks, public buildings. I work with communities to craft a vision, select artists, and then I work with those artists to manage those projects through completion. So when I first start working with a community that's interested in starting a public art program or commissioning a work of art for their community, the first question I always ask is, why? Why do you want to get in the art business? What impact do you want that art to have in your community? How can the art reflect the community's vision of itself and its vision for the future? Well, every community I've worked with has answered that question a little bit differently. And the answers are important because they help guide how to focus resources and what kind of art projects to pursue. But the answer is also important because at some point, those leaders are going to be asked to justify spending resources on art, and they're going to need to be able to explain why. Because let's face it, not everyone thinks of the arts as essential. It's an extra, a luxury, something to do once everything else is taken care of. So communities need to see and have faith that an investment in art is going to make their community stronger. So when we ask that question why, as I said, we hear different things, but there's some themes that have emerged over my many years of doing this and some places where I've seen art make a real impact. I hear things like, we're interested in having public art to help create a sense of place and build the identity for our community, or we want to build cultural tourism in our city, or we want to beautify our community or activate our downtown. I call those kinds of things, the answer to that why question, the civic goals of public art. And I absolutely believe in the power of art to impact those goals. But there's one other thing that's just as important, and that's the ability of art to inspire, to make you think, to take you out of your everyday for just a moment and experience something beautiful or moving or even strange. Regardless of those civic goals, that, to me, is enough. If we can provide more people with more experience with art, I think we're making individual lives richer and therefore making our communities stronger. So let's talk about one of those civic goals for art. One of the things we often hear is about identity, that the communities are interested in commissioning an artwork to help build the identity of their community. Well, we're lucky. We have one of the best examples of that right here in St. Louis, right? The Gateway Arch. Now, originally created to commemorate westward expansion, for us locals, that's really secondary to it being the symbol of our city. It's the image on the postcard. People all over the world know St. Louis because of the arch. Can you imagine the St. Louis skyline without it? As a local, I love it when you're coming home on a road trip and you get that first glimpse of the arch. You know what I'm talking about, right? There it is, we made it, I'm home, right? Yeah. But if the arch was just a logo, a big object on the riverfront, that wouldn't be enough. The arch is a stunning work of art. And I know this because it moves me. The arch is an experience. When I stand underneath it, like this, and watch the clouds move above it, it is exhilarating. I love how it changes when you move around it, and how small I feel standing next to it. I like to contemplate what it must have been like to watch them put that last piece in and the suspense of it all. It's those experiences, taken as a whole, that give the arch its power. Another goal we hear, another civic goal of public art we often hear is about beautification, right? We want to use public art to beautify our city or beautify a building. Well, about a decade ago, St. Louis Lambert International Airport was undergoing a major renovation of Terminal 1 and had the opportunity to incorporate some art into some of their public spaces. Making the airport more attractive was their civic goal. Well, Alicia LaChance's terrazzo medallion does just that. It is a beautiful integrated artwork, and like Alicia's paintings do, it just crackles with energy. It's not just beautifying that space between the TSA and the gate, right? Although it does do that, right? But it invites you in to just explore those colors, those 41 different colors that she used, and to explore the different symbols. Now, this was Alicia's first time creating a public art project, and it was her first time working in terrazzo. For artists, creating a work in public space can be very different from creating a work for a gallery or a museum. And it's not for everybody. There's the scale, there are the materials, there's the complexity of working with a public agency, but there's something else. When an artist creates a work for a public space, at a certain point, that artwork doesn't really belong to them anymore. It belongs to us. It's ours. And we see evidence of how communities embrace their works of art. Sometimes we give works of art a new name, right? So this is the Cloud Gate in Chicago, amazing work, but it's known worldwide as the Bean. We named it the Bean, right? Sometimes rituals get created around works of art, and this is the Il Porcellino sculpture of a baby boar in Florence. Travelers since the Renaissance have been rubbing his nose for good luck. Or the artwork just becomes, it becomes the backdrop to special occasions like weddings and graduations, or just our everyday enjoyment of public space. Or sometimes an artwork becomes a platform for creativity. When the city of Alexandria, Virginia commissioned this light-filled, technology-driven work of art, their civic goal was to activate a new public space in their Old Town Historic District right on their waterfront. And the project has been a smashing success. It has been an absolute magnet for activity. But what wasn't expected was that it was also going to be a magnet for creativity. Now, the Office of the Arts in Alexandria realized this potential right away and invited a dance troupe and a musician to create work in response to the piece. But it's been the way that people have been using their photography that has been most surprising. And not just selfies and photos of kids and dogs, although there are lots and lots of those. It's the way that people have been using this art to make their own art, creatively capturing the color and the light and the shadow and reflections in their own creations. And there are probably about 5,000 of those at that hashtag. So that public art, it's created by an artist. It's usually owned by some kind of a public or civic entity, but that artwork, it belongs to us. Now, when I started doing this work about 20 years ago, I would have a meeting with a community group or some civic leaders to talk about their public art program or a project, and someone would inevitably say, you know, I'm not an art person, or I don't really know anything about art. Well, when you're me and you're trying to marshal a group of people to create a vision for art in their community, that can be kind of disheartening. You see, we aren't born art people and not art people. As kids, we sing songs and tell stories and draw pictures. And then at some point, some of us just stop. Now, other interests might crowd out the arts, or we may not have access to the time or the materials or the classes or museums or galleries. Or we may just start to think that art is something for other people, for the wealthy, the educated, for people in certain zip codes. And if we don't check those boxes, then we can't be a part of the conversation. Well, I believe we are all art people. We could all use a little art in our lives. We all have the capacity to be moved or inspired by a work of art. The ability to see beauty is within all of us, all of us. I would go as far as to say that as individuals, we need art. So about a year ago, Americans for the Arts, a national association, did a nationwide survey and found that 70% of people experienced art in non-traditional locations, like a recreation center, or a park, or a sports stadium, or a transit center, or just walking down the street. Bringing art into our everyday places creates opportunities for everyone to experience art. So I should add that just about every not art person that I've ever worked with was able to speak perfectly intelligently about the art in their community and the kinds of art projects that they wanted to see. Most were pretty glad to be part of the conversation, and some have even become their community's biggest advocate for public art. Now, they might not embrace that art person identity as I have, but hopefully in some way their relationship to art has changed, and they can certainly answer that question, why? And the why does matter, because it is important to know that the art beautified the airport or activated the plaza, but it's just as important that someone was moved or inspired. You see, those civic goals can't take away the fact that public art provides opportunities for everybody, for all of us, to experience art and live a creative life. So when you take the vision of an artist and the goals of a community and bring them together, our cities are changed favorably and our individual lives are inspired.